Alrighty, welcome back. So the goal of this video is going to be to use CSS Grid to properly organize all of our buttons here. I'm not going to go super in-depth on CSS Grid, but we will check out a resource on it now. So as an overview, the CSS Grid layout kind of works like a table in that it enables the author to align elements into columns and rows, but these columns and rows are a lot more customizable than they would be inside of a table. So elements within a container can actually even overlap themselves. You can see down here, if we scroll to an example, we have a wrapper and we have 6 elements here. And you can see that we have our CSS starting with our wrapper. This is the important part for us. So this is to set up display grid. And then this is to create columns. Specifically, we're going to create 3 columns, and they're each going to be 1 FR. So 1 FR stands for 1 fraction, meaning that it will divide evenly the space in our wrapper into the amount of columns we have here. In this case, it's 3, but for us, we're actually going to have 4 columns. And then we have a 10 pixel grid gap between them. And then you can see each of these have their own grid column and grid row property, which allows them to be customized even further. So if we go down to the example here, we can see that we have our 6 objects. They all have a 10 pixel grid gap. And you can see that we have 3 columns here on the page. All right, so to apply this to what we are going to be doing, as I said, we're actually going to be using something very similar to this. So we can actually copy this for now, and we can jump back into our code. And right below this, we're going to comment out a title for our buttons. And we're going to start with our calculator-buttons class. So this is what is acting as the wrapper for all of our buttons. And we're going to paste in this display grid, grid template columns. And instead of having 3 columns, we want 4 columns. And we're also going to give it padding of 10 pixels all the way around. Okay, so let's save that and jump back to our project. Okay, so I would say that that's definitely already a big improvement over what we had before. So we have our 4 columns. Our operators are exactly where they should be. But we're going to need to customize the way that our equal sign is. So right now you can see that we have 4 rows here. We actually want to have 5 rows, and we want to have these 4 rows taken up by the equal sign, and we want all of these other things to be squished into the 3 columns here. Okay, so we'll need to modify the grid column and grid row properties on the equal sign itself in order to accomplish this. So first, we'll go over to the grid column resource. So you can see here in this example that there are many different ways that we can set the grid column property with 1 value, 2 values, or with a span value. For us, what we're trying to do with the grid column is get the equal sign to be on the right. So we can actually modify this, and I'm going to make it -2. And we can see now that our first object is now on the right side here. So let's try to implement that within our equal sign. So we'll jump back to the project, and then right below here, we're going to create our equal-sign class, and we're going to give it a grid-column of -2, and we can save that and check it out, and we can see now that it has moved over to be on the right side. So that's exactly where we want it to be, but now we want it to take up all of these spaces as well. So for that, we're going to look at the grid row documentation. So you can see that this is a shorthand for grid row start and grid row end. And if we look at the bottom value here, we have it starting at row 1, so meaning starting at the top, and then it is spanning 2 rows, so this first row and then another row. For us, we want to start on grid row 2. So we want to allow our operators to be on the top, and instead of span 2, we want it to span 4, because it's going to take up 4 rows. So we can actually you know what? Copy that. Why not? And jump back, and we can paste that in there, save it, and then jump back to our project. And we can see now that we have exactly what we want. Our grid row is starting after column 1, so it's starting column 2, and then you can see that it's spanning 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. All right, that is awesome. So that's all we needed to do with CSS Grid. You can see how fast it is to create a very customizable layout of rows and columns, which is absolutely perfect for a calculator. If you want to learn more about CSS Grid, I'll provide a link to another guide on the topic that is very useful. For us, in the next video, we're going to focus on styling our buttons. I'll see you in that one. Bye for now.